Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to
Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
And this is a real program. It's not fake. This is a real place. And if you want to be really good at football, this is a really good place to be.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
So Bama and Ole Miss could be examples of what A&M can do from this point moving forward, OB, because people had given up on Bama and Ole Miss, even though they both had close losses. Like those, they didn't get stomped by any stretch, but people had moved on from Ole Miss. People had moved on from Alabama after their two midseason losses, or even earlier than midseason losses. So A&M can use that as an example. Not that they would, but we can as a talk show. Of you fix some issues and you can play your best football. It can still be ahead, and that's what we've seen from Ole Miss. And outside of the Georgia game, which Alabama played their best first half for sure, they sure looked like national championship type contenders yesterday, or excuse me, Saturday.
Well, they did. Not that I was surprised, because we saw it. LSU cannot handle a running quarterback.
Yeah.
And Jalen Milroe is the ultimate running quarterback in the country. And man, I watched some of that game mainly because of our picks. Right, I want to see if I got it right.
I think I did terrible.
And I think probably we all did. But Jalen Milroe is just every time I watch him play, I'm like, how did they let him get out of Texas?
Yeah. He wanted to come here too. Well, anyway, I think, look, you got to play this New Mexico State game, and then we'll start really getting into the meat of, the chances are going to come with Auburn. If you don't take care of business against Auburn, then what's it for? The Texas game will be huge no matter what. But it does, to me, strike me as, hey, you can do what Alabama's doing right now, right? You can fix your season. Not that your season needs fixing. You just need to.
Hey, you're still in first place.
You're still in first place. You will be favored against New Mexico State. You'll be favored against Auburn. Win those two games. Sets up a showdown with Texas. Will you be a favorite in that game if you've won those next two?
You got to tell me what Texas does. Probably not. Maybe at home. But if you're a dog, it'll only be by a couple of points.
1.5, 2. Yeah. I agree. But I don't want to say gave me optimism, because I think A&M's most of the issues are very fixable, OB.
I think most of them are. I feel pretty good about Amari Daniels, even though he's replacing what I think is the best offensive player on the team. But, I think you're fine with Amari. I worry about when Amari has to, take a break. I think your defense is better than they showed at South Carolina. And I think maybe the whole recalibrating your attitude and your frame of mind to be more physical. And I'm sure that's something they've probably, I would imagine, focused on in this open week. And then you got a glorified practice. Coaches won't say that, but we can, against New Mexico State, to hone in on it and, just prove you're going to be more physical. And you have to be the rest of the year.
You're going to have to be, no doubt about that. So let's revisit where we are with A&M. 7-2, they do control their destiny. Mm-hmm. If you win every game in front of you,
you're going to be in the SEC championship game.
How rare is it for A&M to be in a position that if you win every game in front of you in November, right, starting from right now, November the 11th, right, the 11th, yep, that you'll be a national champion? Like, I know that's a long way to go, but that is where you are today, November the 11th.
Right. You will be in 10 games in, and you'll be in that position, 10 games in. So it'll be late November. Quite frankly, I believe you're going to be in that position on that last game of the year, against Texas. But as we talk about it today, it doesn't seem that big of an accomplishment because your expectations change. But again, had we in August said before the Notre Dame game said, hey, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to get into mid-November, and you're going to be with a realistic chance to get into the SEC championship game, to win it, to get into the playoff, and maybe even win the national championship. You're going to be in that discussion.
You will be discussed.
Had you said that in August, I think everybody would have said, sign me up.
I didn't see the report. Chris Doring was on SEC Network. Somebody posted on the boards, and he didn't have A&M as his 5 teams that can make the playoffs. And I don't have a problem with that right now because the last time we saw Texas A&M, they played their worst brand of football.
Yeah, they did. And I remember Chris, picked South Carolina, so give him credit for that. Look, I don't care. Winning, if you're in the top 5 and lose, then you're out. Not being in the top 5 and win, then you're going to be in it. It's that simple. So it really doesn't matter what anybody thinks. If you took Chris Doring and he sat there and said, you know what, they're not in my top 5, but then you took somebody else, because I saw somebody, let's say Cole Kubelik, and he said, no, I've got him number 2 on my list. Neither one of it matters.
They don't matter at all. No, they don't matter at all. And again, just win the games in front of you.
Just win the games in front of you. I know except for this week, that sounds, that's easier said than done. But that's where you are. Just win the games in front of you. But they've been here before in past coaches where you say, hey, just win the games in front of you, and then they didn't.
Yeah, that's true. But let's kind of revisit where we've been. All right. So when we last left you, game-wise, right? We had a bye week, right? The open week. When we last left you, A&M was struggling with the loss of Le'Veon Moss.
Huge loss.
Still hoping to see Chase Basantis back at some point.
Still hoping.
Too many penalties.
Yeah.
And not great tackling.
Yeah. And I'm one of those that believe that a big part of tackling is just attitude.
Yeah.
And it's my opinion, though it may be misguided, it just appeared to me, again, that was a team that just wasn't ready to play. And it showed in the tackling.
Yeah, it did show in the tackling. And to me, those issues, let's kind of go through them again, all right? Tackling, I think, can be fixed. Because we've seen this team tackle well this year.
Yes.
Okay? Tackling can be fixed. Penalties can be fixed.
Well, when are they going to fix it?
It can. Yeah. Rein it in, right?
Yeah. But you get into mid-November and it's been an issue all year, you start to think, well, that's just what you're going to do.
But the last couple of weeks have been even more.
Yeah.
Right? It's been more. Running game. You can't fix Le'Veon Moss. He's done, right? What you are very fortunate to have is you've had depth at that position. Now you have lack of depth, but you do have Amari Daniels, who can be a number 1 running back for you.
Well, he led the team in rushing last year.
Yep.
And I think that 56-yard touchdown run shows you that he had against South Carolina, shows you what he's capable of.
And then the other thing is the Chase Basantis injury. Well, you've heard Coach Elko talk about it, that he doesn't think it's a long-term thing. Right. So hopefully he's back for the Auburn game, if not the Texas game, right? Hopefully he's back. And I do think he, along with being the best offensive lineman on the team, or if not 1A, 1B, right? Zune's got something to say there. The line is better when he is out there, significantly
without
better.
A doubt.
Running for those short yardage plays, significantly better when Chase Basantis is out there.
I agree with that. I think he, like you said, if he's not the best offensive lineman, then he's the second best within it, and it's not a big difference between him and Zune.
So I saw Billy tweet this. There's a gentleman by the name of John Tweet Sports. I don't know if you saw this. He has a graphic up. It may be hard for you to see. Let's see if we can pull that up right there. So here's strength of schedule. Texas, of the teams in the mix, 55th. Tennessee, 35th. You've also got Alabama, 11th strength of schedule. Kentucky, 23rd. Georgia, 1st. And our Fighting Texas Aggies, 21st on that list. Strength of schedule of the teams that are left, not the schedule that's left, but overall this season.
Well,
and Texas, I mean, goodness gracious, every team they play, you were kind of going through it in the pregame.
Yeah, I think they played 3 teams that started a freshman quarterback making his first start, being I can't even remember, Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State. I think he was, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think he was making his first start. And then, is it Michael Hawkins from Oklahoma?
That's correct.
And then, the Aiden Warner last week for Florida.
And Michigan, they had a walk-on.
They had their walk-on.
Yeah. So they have not had to take on seasoned quarterbacks.
Right.
Michael Van Buren is really good, by the way. But
this isn't to say that they're not good. I just wonder if they're as good as their stats show. Like their defense is number 1 in the country, I think. Well, yeah, but where do the teams you've played rank offensively? And I think 5, maybe 6 of them are 100th or worse.
So before we go around the room and say hi to people, give me your biggest reason for optimism for A&M for these next 3 games, and your biggest reason for pessimism.
My biggest reason for optimism is I still think they have a strong run defense. I think they had the one game that's an outlier. And as we talked about it, they're not going to face a quarterback with those kind of skills again, the running skills again. So
maybe in the SEC championship game.
Maybe, but and who's that going to be? Jackson Dart
or Jalen Milroe? Yeah, Jalen Milroe's built like a tight end himself.
He really is. So those are the reasons to I'm optimistic. Pessimistic is, like I said, I think you're going to be okay with Amari Daniels at running back. You're going to lose something, but I think you're okay there. But it's the inconsistency in the passing game. That's the thing that gives me pause.
Yep.
At some point, you just got to be more productive. Receivers.
Yep.
Receivers are going to have to be more productive. And I don't know what they're going to do, but in my opinion, which matters absolutely nothing, you've got to figure out a way to take advantage of Marcel Reed's running ability, or take more advantage of it, or his ability to throw on the run.
Sure.
Yeah,
yep.
I think you got to move him around. I don't think he's his best just being a pocket quarterback.
Do you think the people know what they're listening to?
Well, by now they should.
They should. It's TexAgs Live.
Yeah.
We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. I'm David Nuño. He's Olin Buchanan, and we are currently in the Holistic Planning Cool Zone.
The cool zone.
Have you thought about investing in pro sports recently?
Yeah, I've thought about it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe you should reach out to them. Investinprosports.com.
Huh. I have to see what team could I
a team that their owner.
I know one I wouldn't invest in after yesterday.
Well, maybe after yesterday's comments of looked like Jerry kind of understood, hey, this is partially my fault.
Partially? Oh, okay. Thanks, Jerry.
Hey, let's go around the room and say hi to the people. We go behind the glass. We say hi to Nick Savage. And Nick, good morning, my friend. How are you
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
What's up?
I'm good. Well, a reason for me to be optimistic is Coach Elko, right? So you get a bye week, you get a glorified warm-up game against New Mexico State, like you're saying, to get back into SEC play. I'm optimistic that he's taken this time to kind of address some of the issues y'all were just talking about. And one reason to be pessimistic is I'm afraid of those injuries. We're so deep into the season now. Everyone's feeling the wear and tear. Obviously it's something you can't control. It just happens as part of the game. But a few more, key injuries here and there kind of scare me. So that's one reason for me to be pessimistic, I guess.
Speaking of, potentially more injuries, because that's what happens in college football. That's what scares Nick. At this point in the season, it is what it is. You're going to lose guys. Some teams are going to be lucky. Some teams are not.
Yeah, I always said that if you go back and look at a team that wins a championship, you can always look at all their stats, but they're almost always, not 100%, but almost always the team that has the fewest injuries.
Yep. Let's. By the way, if you want to be a part of the conversation, call us or text us, 979-693-1150. If you call us, we'll pick it up on the Boss Firearms hotline. If you text us, we'll look at it on the Little Sluggers text line. We go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Jackson Oxney, what's up, buddy?
What's going on? How are you guys?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It might just be me, but I feel like weekends when we don't have Aggie football, for me, they go by really fast. They seem to fly by faster.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. I enjoyed having a couple days off. I could have probably used one more day, but I was also ready to get back to the grind.
So you found your way to Brady.
I did find my way to Brady. Brady was awesome. It was great.
You got one quail, right?
I did get a quail. I'm not the best shot yet, but it's coming. Day one, you know. Hunter Shurtleff got me ready for it. It was fun. I'll actually talk about it later, but the best part of this entire experience, this hunting experience, the bird dog experience, thank you to Jonathan Lusk, was the amount of TexAggers that I got to meet and like develop some real like fellowships and friendships. Like it was great.
Those TexAggers are good folks.
Yeah.
We love them all,
and they love you.
Well,
what do you think we talked about last?
Well, you know, aside from Aggie football, I would imagine the election was a pretty big deal. They're doing a lot of.
It may have come up. Roger Krager, shout out to him. He was awesome. He hung out with us on that first night.
You know, I loved to have heard Roger Krieger sing, and I could have done the Trump dance while he's singing.
No, that looks like more like the Running Man.
Well, that's kind of like the Trump dance.
Jackson, what do you have for us?
Yeah, we got some hoops. Texas A&M men's basketball, they had 5 scores in double digits as the number 13 Aggies defeated East Texas A&M 87-55 on Friday at Reed Arena. And senior transfer Zurich Phelps in his Aggie debut had a game-high 18 points in just 18 minutes off the bench. He also pulled down 5 rebounds and had 3 steals. The team continues their 4-game homestand with a game tonight at 7 p.m. against the Lamar Cardinals at Reed Arena.
Well, you even mentioned it last week. Like Phelps is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and I know they weren't playing the best competition, but you just watch the way that guy plays.
You know.
And I think he's going to more than adequately replace Boots. Man, he was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And they just looked like a good. Again, look, you got to take it. Understand who they were playing, but I think we're going to be looking back before long and saying that game against Central Florida, that was just the outlier.
Yep. All right, let's do this. Let's hit a break. When we come back on TexAgs Live, what do we got going on, OB? How many teams would be undefeated with Indiana's schedule in the SEC? Let's talk about that. And by the way, I like their story. I do like their story.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Prize Picks, prizepicks.com/TexAgs. Use the code TexAgs. And I think you're going to have a good old time playing daily fantasy sports. Basically, you're going to pick 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll. So, like you could have picked this weekend, Jalen Milroe, more than. How about Colorado? Travis Hunter and company.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't want to like them, and I'm not going to like them. But you got to give them their credit. They've done a very nice job turning their season around.
They've done a really good job in a weak Big 12.
So that's what you can do with Prize Picks. You're going to pick. You're going to see some money kind of come in. Here are a couple of little activities you can do. Live squares. You have also Prize Picks World Championships coming up. They've got so many different things that you can do when you go to Prize Picks, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So pick 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll. The website, again, is prizepicks.com/TexAgs. Use the code TexAgs to get $50 guaranteed once you play $5 there at Prize Picks. It's prizepicks.com.
That'll put you on there with birds.
1 bird.
So, you know.
1 quail.
They could have put 0.5 birds, and whoever took the under or over.
It's Prize Picks.
What's up, TexAgs? This commercial break is brought to you by my good friends over at Aggieland Chevrolet, the official automotive sponsor of TexAgs.com and me, Billy Liucci. Greg Gunn is the proud owner of Aggieland Chevrolet and invites you to visit the dealership to experience true Aggie hospitality. From their friendly staff to the experienced service team, Aggieland Chevrolet is TexAgs approved. Check out the dealership off of Highway 6 in Bryan or go to AggielandChevrolet.com and tell them Billy Liucci sent you by.
We're back on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. So I'm going to preface it again with what I kind of ended the last segment with.
Okay.
I like Indiana's story.
Yeah.
I do. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. I like their head coach. I like the bravado. I like what they're doing. I also think it's fair to have a conversation about how other teams would do with that schedule. Now, I'm not saying A&M would be undefeated with that schedule.
I will.
But I'm not saying they won't.
I would say that. Let's look at.
I got it right here, yeah.
Okay.
You want to go first?
Yeah. I haven't got mine pulled up
Okay, I got
yet.
mine. They opened up the season with a victory over FIU.
Yes.
31-7.
Yeah,
A&M wins that game.
Beats FIU.
Okay. Indiana, by the way, I know we're not in the Big Ten, but we're just having a conversation here because there are other teams in the Big Ten that have a much harder schedule than Indiana. So I think two things can be true. I can like their story, and I can also say, eh. So they beat Western Illinois 77-3.
The Leathernecks.
Then they beat UCLA,
which is awful,
42-13.
LSU just drove UCLA, beat them by 17.
Yeah, but I think it was close until the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly. Then we've got Charlotte.
One girl.
Pardon?
Charlotte.
Oh, 52-14.
And then Maryland.
And then another girl.
Maryland.
42-28. Has there been one game that you think
no
A&M, LSU, anybody in the SEC would struggle with?
All the decent teams in the SEC are undefeated with this schedule.
Okay. Indiana then took on Northwestern.
4-5 Northwestern.
Yeah, 41-24 they won.
Yeah.
Here's one, Nebraska.
At least you got to show up and play.
Yeah.
But I would take A&M, LSU, a bunch of teams over Nebraska, which is what, 5-4?
Well, they beat Nebraska 56-7.
Yeah.
That's a beatdown. They were at home.
Yeah, I think I missed that one.
Then they played Washington on the 26th of October, and they won 31-17.
5-5 Washington.
Yep.
South Carolina's undefeated against this, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Then they played Michigan State.
Bad Michigan State team.
47-10 they won.
Yeah. So right now, and then last week against Michigan.
And it was a little closer than I think that they wanted. 20-15 is not an impressive victory over Michigan.
They don't have none of their wins.
They don't have a signature win.
Nobody that we mentioned has a winning record.
Nope. So this weekend we're about to find out. Let's say they lose by 30 to Ohio State. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Are they out of the playoff?
That's a heck of a good question because after that they've got Purdue, which is 1-8. So if you lose to Ohio State in the one game you played against a team that's going to have a winning record, I don't know, Washington may finish.
Play. It's possible. I guess they would play Oregon if they made it to the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, well, I think you're going to see an Ohio State-Oregon rematch.
Yeah, I do.
So, I guess what I'm getting at is they're going to finish 11-1. And if they are not competitive at all with Ohio State,
I still think they get in.
They might.
I think they get in.
But you look at a team. Look at all the 2-loss teams in the SEC. And to your point, how many of those would be undefeated against that? Are you really gonna penalize? I wonder if the committee.
I think South Carolina's undefeated with the schedule.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So I'm saying is, are you going to penalize a team with 2 losses for actually playing? Like A&M played Notre Dame,
right?
And is going to have better losses than him. Missouri is probably undefeated against this schedule.
They had the easiest schedule in the SEC. They would gladly change the schedule for this schedule.
You think who?
Missouri's got no chance, right? If they win out, they're 10-2, no chance.
No chance. But I'm just thinking about the 2-loss teams. I think Georgia.
Georgia's undefeated.
Tennessee.
Undefeated.
Right?
At this point. Now, the Ohio State, if they beat Ohio State, even though I predicted Ohio State to win it all this year before the season started, they have underwhelmed me this year.
Their running game is not what we expected it to be.
But if they beat Ohio State, Indiana, welcome to the playoffs.
And maybe even if they beat Ohio State, you start wondering, are they going to win the Big Ten?
Right.
But if they show up, let's say they play Ohio State within 14 or less,
they're good.
Then yeah, they're going to be in, and they may be in anyway. The only way I think they're not in is if because I don't think they're going to lose Purdue, even though it's a rivalry game.
Right.
The old Oaken Buckets at stake. But I think that they're going to finish 11-1, and even if they get just destroyed by Ohio State, they might get in, but they definitely put themselves at risk. But I think if they were within 14 to Ohio State, they'll be in.
Jackson, look at the projections from last week and see how many Big Ten teams are expected. I think it's 3 or 4. It's 4 right now.
I think at least 4.
You think 4 from the Big Ten will get in?
Yeah, I think Penn State will get in, Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana.
There it is. There's the poll from last week. So you got Oregon, obviously, Ohio State as your top 2. Georgia's going to drop. Where would they drop to, OB?
Oh, gosh, probably to, I think you have to drop them all the way down to.
Like 10?
No, further than that, 12.
Well, the AP poll that came out on Sunday, they have them at 11.
Yeah, AP has them at 11.
They've got 2 losses.
Miami's going to drop.
Yeah, Miami's going to drop.
But they're still in pole position for the ACC, so they could be, technically, they could be fine.
I just wonder where they're going to put A&M. Is A&M going to be ranked in the top 12 after not playing?
I don't think so. What were they there? 14? Is that what it
14.
said? 14. It's possible.
Teams in front of them losing. I don't know if they're going to drop them that far. I don't know if they'll drop Miami that far or Georgia. I don't think so.
And the reason I wanted to go this direction with Indiana was because initially I thought Ole Miss had such a powder puff schedule, if you will, to start off the season. They were destroying teams, right?
Yeah.
They were destroying them. You're like, who have they really played?
Well, then they lost to Kentucky.
And then they lost to Kentucky, right? I'm sorry, you beat Georgia. And by the way, Lane Kiffin, congratulations, you got your big win.
That's a big win.
Big win.
And then the way they destroyed Arkansas the week before.
Yep. And I think the Oklahoma game was probably a little closer than expected. The LSU win is a big win, right? That's a big win at LSU.
They lost to LSU.
Oh, sorry, they lost to LSU. That's right, that was an OT. South Carolina.
South Carolina's a big win.
That's a huge win. At the time, we didn't recognize it.
Right.
But now, South Carolina's, can you put South Carolina's schedule up for me?
I'm going to say something that's going to be blasphemy here. I think South Carolina reminds me of Texas A&M in 2012.
Ah.
That toward the end of the year,
playing the best football out of everybody.
Now A&M lost their opener against Florida. South Carolina lost to LSU in Game 3, but they blew it. A&M lost to LSU that year because they blew it. The difference is A&M beat Alabama, and South Carolina blew a chance to beat Alabama. But I'm saying, toward the end of the year, at the end of the year, with a dynamic quarterback, they're except they had a better defense than what A&M had that year. But with a dynamic quarterback, they may be the best team right now.
I expect them to finish 9-3 because I do think they're going to beat Clemson.
I do too.
Right.
And I think they're going to beat Missouri.
I'm
going to take them over Wofford.
Yeah, I think so. It's not the basketball team, so they're pretty good.
So I think South Carolina is going to be 9-3.
And I'm not saying this to make myself feel better about the loss to them, because I don't feel better about the loss to them, because that was a gross game.
It was gross,
right? But South Carolina, they have good enough quarterback play. I was told that their offensive line was terrible. Well, they were okay. I mean, there was a lot of blitzing that was, they got to him.
Yeah,
he just broke it, right? Their defense is legit good, legit.
It is.
So they are who I didn't think they were.
Yeah, maybe I'm taking a little bit too far saying they're as good or the best team now.
They're playing great at the end of the year.
Ole Miss is the best team right now.
Yep, no doubt.
But South Carolina is playing really good football. They're playing like a team that could be a playoff team. They won't because of the 3 losses, but they're playing like a team that should be.
Let's talk 1775.
Let's do.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister-in-law couldn't get in town or soon enough for me to take them out there.
I had some excellent barbecue in Brady. I mean, excellent barbecue. But I'm sorry, it's kind of like when you watch a movie that's so good,
yeah,
and then the next part two. Very rarely part twos are good, right? Or as good. But they raise the bar so high.
Yeah,
it's just hard. Like, look, I like it. It's great. But I've had the best.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
To me, after having 1775 barbecue, this is the greatest compliment I can give them. Since I've had 1775 barbecue, since I've experienced it, it's like all barbecue to me is like Lincoln Riley cooked it. Like everything else is like Lincoln Riley's.
Yeah,
next to 1775.
I'm not going to go that far because I've had some good sense, right? I've had this is good. This is good. It's just not 1775.
Not 1775.
So if you want to ruin the rest of barbecue in the world, go to 1775. It's just not going to match. But then when you go there, you're going to be like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and and the thing is, they're good in everything. Like some places have great pork ribs. 1775 has great. Some places have great brisket. 1775 has sausage. And then, but who else has the queso mac and cheese?
Nobody. 1775, txbbq.com. Open Thursday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until they're sold out. Online ordering turns off at 10 a.m. 8203 Raymond Souster Parkway in College Station. 979-492-6241. It's 1775. Everyone, David Nuño here in a moment right now for Snaps Clothing. They are the makers of the only official licensed Texas A&M Pearl Snap shirts. I'm wearing it right now. This is part of their Tailgater collection. It's built for game day. My friend Edgar over there is doing great work. You've got to check out the clothing. It's the Pearl Snaps. It's the cool look. It's kind of hip, but also Western. You'll love it, and they have great stuff there. They'll keep you comfortable as you're repping your Aggie gear, and it's the place to go to get it. Whether you're watching the game from home or tailgating before watching the stands, these shirts have you covered. Head to snapsclothing.com. That is snapsclothing.com to gear up for the season.
saw it on Friday.
Did you?
Rain.
And we are back on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. We're about to get to the Boss Firearms Hotline and talk to Jackie Sherrill, but I want to read this one to you, Calvin. I mean, not Calvin, OB. This is from Calvin. You look like a Calvin now. Calvin Klein. Okay. Nuño, all you can do is play the teams on your schedule. I'll make a hamburger wager they will play OSU close within 10 to 14 points. But I disagree. South Carolina's undefeated with Indiana's schedule. You guys are stretching for stories this morning.
Okay, well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I'm going to take South Carolina over the leathernecks of Western Illinois and FIU and Northwestern and Nebraska.
I think Nebraska depends which Nebraska team shows up, right?
Well, what 5-5 team has South Carolina lost to? Because nobody that Indiana's played is better than 5-5.
That's right.
So what 5-5 team?
Would you take South Carolina over Michigan?
Yeah.
I would too. I would too. And look, I understand the timing of this a few days after or a week after A&M losing to South Carolina. Could sound like I'm trying to make myself feel better. I was just that impressed with South Carolina.
Well, they just went out and beat what turned out to be a good Vanderbilt team, 28-7. They beat them by 3 touchdowns.
So, anyway, that's just our opinion, and there's no stretching going on here. All right, let's do this. It's time to talk with our weekly conversation with Jackie Sherrill, brought to you by Texas Best Home Loans. You trusted Jackie to lead the Aggies to Southwest Conference titles. Now trust his son Braxton to lead you to the best rates in home loans and refinancing at Texas Best Home Loans. Score better rates and lower fees with Braxton Sherrill. TXBestHomeLoans.com, an equal housing lender. We go to the Boss Firearms Hotline, and that's where we find Coach Sherrill. Jackie, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
Doing well, Coach. Thank you.
We're good. You probably caught the tail end of what we were talking about there. So a week later, after that South Carolina loss, I know we didn't get to catch up with you last week. Just tell me how you see A&M. Like, do you still have them on that same trajectory? Are you having a little bit of pause because of the injuries, because of what we saw tackling-wise against South Carolina? With a week to kind of digest, where are you with the Aggs?
Well, certainly that game kind of jumped out at you that either exposed some things that we need to improve, or they proved that we're not the players or the team that we're supposed to be. But we're still in a great position. Losing Moss was a great loss. And you go, and very rarely does a team have 2 great running backs that you lose and try to, make up for. But right now, A&M sits in a good position because, they have the New Mexico State game that they can play some younger players and maybe shore up or correct some things. Then, you're off to Auburn. And right now, you'd have to pick A&M to beat Auburn. And if that happens, then you're playing Texas to see who goes to the Southwest Conference Championship. And so there's a lot to play for. There's a lot for the Aggies to be excited about. We just have to go out and perform.
Yeah, Coach. So I don't know that you had many teams that had a clunker like A&M had at South Carolina and then followed up with an open date. But what do you think? How do you approach it if you were in that situation? Do you just kind of flush that game, say, we're better than that, let's just focus on what we do better? Or do you really put a coach harder on defense? And, how do you approach it in an open week in a situation like that?
Well, your open weekend should be focused on 2 things. One, to get better, make corrections, improve on what you're doing correctly, and eliminate what you're not doing good, and that is on offense or defense. And however, it gives you a week to really work your players. You have an off week. You can take 2 or 3 days in that week and really work on things full speed that you wouldn't work on full speed. Let's say we're getting ready to play Alabama or Texas, then you would not work as hard as you did this past week after the South Carolina loss. However, there's a lot of things psychologically, and I remember a couple of games that we didn't play well. Back then, we had 16 millimeter film, and then we went to tape. But I would put it in the gas can, put lighter fluid on, and burn it up. That game's over with. Move on. Let's don't think about how badly we played or the mistakes that we made. So there's different psychological opponents that you use, and today I think it's extremely important that every coach uses a mentor to help the coach do things psychologically with the players to make sure that they are prepared mentally, emotionally, and understand where they are. The focus is on this week. You win this week, then you go to Auburn, but everybody's going to be pointing to the Texas game. And that game, and if we win this week and beat Auburn, then you're playing for a championship. And how long has it been since you played Texas for the championship, not only for the state championship of Texas, but also the SEC West?
Talking to Jackie Sherrill here on TexAgs Live. Coach Sherrill, last thing for you. I want to kind of follow up that train of thought and just ask you something. On the teams you've coached and maybe teams you've coached against, when you have a stinker as bad as A&M had against South Carolina, can it just be really an isolated event? Or is it maybe a sign of like, hey, this is really who you are when you don't bring your complete A game on the road?
Both. In this league, regardless of who you play, and Alabama, played a great game against Georgia, exciting game, won. Next week went to Vanderbilt and got embarrassed. We got embarrassed at South Carolina, and that's something that resonates, should resonate with not only the coaches, the players, the managers, the trainers, but as fans. And, how do we help? We help by showing up and making, A&M the hard place to play. And so, when you look at a football team and you look at the reason they're successful, it's not just the players or the coaches. I mean, you have to go all the way up in the administration because they gave you the facilities. Then you have to understand the fan space. How much does the fan, and you look around the country at the size of stadiums, and then you look at how many stadiums are a quarter empty, a half empty, or there is no support. So who comes first? The horse or the cart? To me, everybody says that the horses are the players. Well, to me, the fans are the players because they are so important, and they are so important at A&M. If we want to be in position to win the West, then we show up and we give our players confidence and try to win this week. Certainly, hopefully that we do. And then we go to Auburn. But and if we can do those two, there's not enough tickets in that stadium for the Texas A&M game.
For sure.
Coach Sherrill, great stuff as always, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. You too, sir. That is the great Jackie Sherrill there on the Boss Firearms Hotline, brought to you by Texas Best Home Loans. When we come back around Aggieland with Kay Naegeli. All right, let's talk about Bird Dog. I just experienced it. Jonathan Lusk he took me to Brady, Texas, and I had an awesome weekend. I mean, or actually not even a weekend. It was a Wednesday night and a Thursday night. The best food, right? The food was 5-star, personal chef was there. It was fantastic. The lodge we stayed in, it's not even a lodge, it's a ranch with like houses. It was just incredible overlooking the San Saba River. It was an incredible experience. The hunting was fun. The fellowship was amazing. And that's what Bird Dog does. They set up these awesome hunts for you because they're an Airbnb for hunters and also for the ranchers. And I'm telling you, if you want to go, you can even, like I'm even talking about Jonathan about doing a husband-wife thing where the wives can do some yoga, or if they want to go hunting, they can. The guys can go do the hunting. They'll set up these awesome adventures for you, your friends, and maybe new friends. And I'm telling you, you are going to love it. The website is birddogit.com. Birddogit.com. Check it out. I'm telling you, it is well worth your time. Birddogit.com. And we are back on TexAgs Live. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. It's time for Around Aggieland presented by Norman G. State Bank. Norman G. State Bank, rock solid banking. The website is normangstatebank.com. And with that, we go to Kay Naegeli.
Let's get right into it. No funny business today.
No funny business?
Straight to it.
Your pack isn't on, apparently.
That's
This is no one's going to make fun of you yet. Just wait 4 minutes. There we go.
You see, normally Nick just hands it to me turned on. I'm not going to blame it on him because I definitely should have checked. But
he's yelling in the background.
He really is. Yeah. He's really frustrated with me.
It's all right.
We're going to get straight into it. No funny business as my mic was not turned on. The Aggies are coming off a bye week. They are still ranked number 15 in the AP poll. No movement there. They will face New Mexico State this Saturday. That is a 6:45 kick on SEC Network at Kyle Field. Should be a good one. On the basketball front, I want to start off with some women's. Joni Taylor's Aggies back rolling. They had 5 Aggies reach double figures as A&M controlled Western Michigan just yesterday on Sunday, won 86-38. It was a great outing for them. They look to take that positive momentum on the road. They will head to West Virginia, who is 2-0 this Friday. That will be at 6 p.m. Central Time. And then on the men's basketball front, after a 1-1 start, Buzz Williams and Texas A&M look to stay in the win column, hosting Lamar tonight at Reed Arena. Tip-off is set for 7 p.m. on SEC Network. Additionally, volleyball not having the best stretch right now. The second of a 3-game away stretch. They fell to the Tennessee Lady Vols on Sunday afternoon. They now sit at 15-7 in the conference, or 15-7 overall, 6-6 in the conference, with just 4 regular season games remaining. One of those is at Oklahoma on Wednesday. That is continuing their away stretch, and they will play at 7 p.m. as well. Last but not least, equestrian.
You waited for it
Today. He is so locked in over there. The number 2 equestrian team unfortunately fell on the road to number 1 Auburn, 15-4 on Saturday afternoon. So they look to bounce back as well.
All right, Kay. Thank you very much.
Of course.
OB?
Yeah.
So, game week.
Game week.
I needed the rest because I don't like losing, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, take care of business, take care of business, take care of business.
Yeah, they're going to win this week.
Yep.
I'll go out on a limb and predict them to beat New Mexico State.
Thank you.
The Aggies are going to win that one.
The Aggies are definitely going to win that one. Thank you, sir. When we come back on TexAgs Live, Tom Hart will join us, then Billy Liucci, then more of you. It's TexAgs Live. back-to-back segments. Kay doesn't have her mic on. I don't have my mic on. Tom Hart's not, doesn't get his Zoom link early. I mean, it's that kind of Monday morning because it was a bye week. Let's go to the Boss Firearms Hotline and talk to our buddy, Tom Hart. Tom, good morning, buddy.
I hit the snooze button a few times this morning, too. So it's perfectly fine, and I totally understand.
Hey, so I started off the show with this thought process, and tell me about it. Look, the South Carolina loss hurt, right? Like the score was not indicative of how close that game was, but regardless, South Carolina was clearly the better team, in my opinion. I mean, in everybody's opinion, on that particular evening. But I look at what has happened for Alabama and Ole Miss, how some losses, it felt like everybody had moved off of them and their season was done. And now both those teams are sitting pretty good, man. And I think A&M has an opportunity to be in that same position over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think this season is definitely different for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, with the 12-team playoff, everything's more wide open and there are more opportunities. So getting our minds wrapped around what that looks like in November versus, where we've been over the previous years. And then without divisions, like it is a wide open race to make it to Atlanta. I'm sure you've discussed this already. There's a chance for an 8-team tie. Mm-hmm. And that's only in first place, right? So if that doesn't happen, there's not an 8-team tie for first. There's still going to be a logjam for second. So I think that what does that afford you? It affords you the opportunity to kind of make some mistakes, recuperate, climb back up. It's also a longer season because all these teams have double byes. So you have 2 different off weeks where I think, David, maybe like one of the things you're experiencing is you look back, you step back as a fan and you kind of take everything in and you go, well, that team is doing X. Why can't we? Or that team is doing Y. We should be, discussing the same boat as them. So while there's total chaos going on right now, it is spread out a little bit. And I think it helps us appreciate it a lot more too.
Talking to Tom Hart here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. So let's talk about LSU for a moment because I want to kind of go around the league since A&M didn't play, and we can get back to A&M. People are ready to fire Brian Kelly, which I find weird because they could still go 9-3 this year. And I know that's the emotion of college football. You lose a game as bad as they did to Alabama at home, and it just feels terrible. But are people being a little premature with the whole BK thing?
I think if you step back and you look at why LSU fans are frustrated, I'm sure he's frustrated about a lot of the same things. And the big picture with LSU football is over the years, even when they've underperformed, they've been loaded with talent, whether it's local talent or recruited talent or guys that had to go to far off lands to go find an Australian punter. It doesn't matter. Like that team was always loaded with talent. And it was always within their reach. He made comments over the course of the offseason about not being able to get these defensive tackles. And when he made those comments, to me, what I heard was not, feel sorry for me. Those kids wanted too much money. What I heard was, we have to pony up if you want me to continue to get elite players that we've gotten over the years. And so I look back at those comments and where they were and the talent disparity on the field against Alabama. And I think LSU fans see the same thing. They say we're not as talented as the other teams in this league. And I think that's a real concern. Like, where is your recruiting focus? How well do you know the area that you're trying to recruit? And then what do you make of the guys that you get on campus? They were thoroughly outperformed Saturday night by Alabama. And so, no, I think that Brian Kelly's resume should speak for itself and what he's accomplished and the fact that, he came here to win a national title like the previous 3 head coaches at LSU have done. But the main thing that you can judge him on, if you wanted to give him some time, was, well, how's recruiting going? What's our talent level? It is not just is it the same as the best teams in this league. At LSU, it should be every year. It's what is it relative to the percentage of NFL dudes that we're used to having on this roster each and every year. And I think that's a big fall off.
Talking to Tom Hart here. So let's talk about things that are going right for the couple of teams that I mentioned earlier. What has changed for Alabama?
Well, I think, I had their loss to Vanderbilt. And going into that game, coming off the Georgia win, Kalen DeBoer told us that he had a conversation with his captains, and he said, hey, listen, you don't have to use the word letdown, but it's human nature. We all know, how hard it is to be at this level against Georgia and to stay at that intensity level the next week for a road game at Vanderbilt. I think that was a learning lesson for Kalen DeBoer that while he's more of a, touchy-feely coach than Nick Saban's fire and brimstone, at some point you have to deliver the fire and brimstone. And just to have this trust that, your players are going to be ready to go without the proper motivation. It's a hug and a kick in the butt at the same time for a lot of these guys. So I think he learned better how to manage his team and how to drive this team because they did not have the right message the week of the Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, they certainly didn't. What about Ole Miss, though? Because Ole Miss felt like they were buried, they were done, and that's weird because they only had 2 losses, but yet the way those losses happened, and here they are, and a team that I think a lot of people could see winning the SEC now.
The defense was awesome, wasn't it? I mean, that's what Lane wanted when they got smoked by Georgia last year. And he'd been the portal king, right, or whatever label we want to put on him, which is fun for social media. But that beatdown by Georgia really hurt him because he realized that the way I'm doing it, it's not going to work. Like, this is wrong, or I'm banging my head against the wall, whatever. I have to change my approach. I have to make some sort of adjustment. It's no longer good enough. We can't get over the hump, just be a high-flying offense. So then, obviously we know what he did in the portal on that D-line. And to me, it's interesting to see a plan come to fruition, Like, okay, it's one thing to have the plan and to go out and try to execute it, but then what does that look like on game day? So I think that's probably the biggest difference is he's got those guys fired up and playing good defense.
Yeah, that is certainly the case. Let's talk about Missouri, because I think you tweeted something to the effect of, this is the kind of game that Missouri would typically lose. They ended up winning, and then Drink was really good in the postgame, as he can be very often.
He's a great salesman. There's no doubt about it. But to me, the bigger picture with this Missouri-Oklahoma game was it's kind of like the Monstars. Just we had a switch of some sort. Oklahoma's program and its national prominence and its incredible history. They've dominated the series with Missouri. And driving back from the game Saturday night, and Missouri's been the laughing stock and made 1,000 mistakes. They got beat by him 77-0 in 1986. Don Farrow taught his offense to Bud Wilkinson in 1943. Bud Wilkinson took that offense, turned it into the triple option, and beat Missouri's brains in for the next 50 years, right? And Oklahoma as a program did. This, to me, is less about Missouri winning a game because Oklahoma fumbled the ball 6 times and handed it to him on the platter. And I think big picture for the SEC, it's where the heck is Oklahoma? This isn't the program that the league thought it was getting. They are a hot mess right now. They have no quarterback play. And this is every year their quarterback's in discussion for the Heisman, right? They have no quarterback play. All their wide receivers are hurt. Their offensive line is below average, putting it nicely, and they've had to deal with injuries. And I think that the transition is going to continue to be difficult for them until they figure out kind of what their identity is in this league.
I do want to go to Drink's quote that was really good. This will be real disappointing to Bob Stoops, but OU doesn't always whip Missouri's ASS anymore. With that, I'll open it up for questions. I thought that was great because, when was it, SEC Media Days or around that time where Stoops was saying, see if I have his quote too, basically that they always beat Missouri. That was basically his quote.
Well, it's a quote that looks really bad now, not because of the Missouri part of it, but the Oklahoma pride was, what do you mean we should be worried about coming into the SEC? Why should we be scared of the SEC? And then the Missouri reference was, we're going to suddenly start losing to Missouri? Like, no, we've kicked their butt for, since 1946. What's going to change now? But the difference between Oklahoma and Texas is when that transition began, Texas head coaching continuity and Oklahoma head coaching chaos. So Sark was able to build from the inside out, offensive line, defensive line, because they already had all the pieces and they're going to continue to get quarterbacks, obviously wide receivers. And Oklahoma was caught in a tailspin. And their defense is still really good, if not elite. They have nothing to speak of on the offensive side of the ball, starting with the offensive line, and have no offensive identity. So if you were to get Stoops on the phone today, I think he'd admit, yeah, we need to be concerned not about the Missouris of the world, but just getting our own house right, because they're a mess.
Tom, let's talk a little bit about Texas, because I find them to be one of the harder teams to analyze, not because of my disdain for the program, but just in general. They have the talent. They got the hype coming into the season. I still don't think they've played anybody. And the teams that they've played, they've taken care of business. That's true, other than Georgia. But they're taking on quarterbacks who are making their first ever start like 3 or 4 times this year. When you break down Texas, I think they are obviously one of the top 5-10 teams in the country for sure. But I also don't know how they match up with other top 5-10 teams in the country.
I think they match up well. I think Georgia outcoached them that night, and they out-executed them. And they drew up all these different pressures that Texas just couldn't get figured out quickly enough. Listen, everybody outside of Oregon, right? I mean, you could throw a couple other contenders in there, but everybody's had a night like that. Like, everybody's had a college football Saturday where the great teams have taken a loss. You could throw Army into that discussion, BYU, whatever. But the point is that Texas is built well to execute all of this, and they had a bad game against Georgia, and so I think that everybody's got a blemish on their record. So I'm going to use a phrase that Aggies don't want to hear, but I'm going to use it in the sense that, why not Texas, right? If everybody has a blemish, then what makes Texas's any worse than anybody else's? They had all the talk about quarterback play for a reason, and they've got 2 guys that they can put out there and win games. The offensive line is great, defensive line is great. Yeah, I mean, I just think they're well built from a depth standpoint throughout that entire roster. And if you were to give out odds right now, as you picture a 12-team playoff, whether they end up getting a first-round bye or not, I think their stock would look pretty good amongst the best teams in the country. I mean, because I'm thinking about what Ohio State looks like, what Indiana looks like, what Oregon looks like. You're going to would you give the Big 12 champ an edge against Texas? I don't think so. Yeah, you're in that discussion. You're one of 4 teams, 5 teams that have a chance to win a national championship, even though we haven't seen how this 12-team bracket plays out and the kind of stress that puts on programs having played all year. And I'll leave you with one more about Sark. One of the things we discussed was this college football season now feels like an NFL season. Not only do you have the double buys in the season, but if you're still playing for a national championship, you're butting up against Valentine's Day. That's unheard of, right? So he started pacing back in the summer to make sure they were healthy and fresh, not based on getting through Thanksgiving, but based on getting all the way through the winter and still being fresh when playing for a national championship. And I think because of their depth and their talent, they've been afforded that luxury to try and do that.
Tom, the reason I bring it up is I initially thought a team like Ole Miss, right? They didn't play anybody in the non-conference, and then they lost early. And I'm like, if they didn't prepare for these big matchups, and then they got punched in the mouth. They weathered that storm. They figured it out. I think Texas A&M, on their hand, while I agree with everything you said, I don't disagree with that. We just haven't seen them play a lot of quality teams, because I don't consider Michigan a quality team. They did beat Vandy. I'll give them that. And Vandy is legit quality. So I guess that's why I want to see what they do against quarterbacks who are not making their first start and who are above 500.
I think that's a fair criticism, and you're right to be curious about it. To your point about the Vandy game, is it was on the road. Granted, it was mostly Texas. But yeah, they had to buckle down and win a fourth quarter game. It's kind of wild the way everyone's schedules have played out. and how some people have had relatively easy go of it, and others are just banging their head against the wall every week. Maybe another reason we might be a step closer to seeing a 9-game conference schedule, a little more balance.
You mentioned Oregon earlier. Are they, in your mind, clearly the best team in the country?
Yeah, I'm old school. Like, I still value the record, right? You go out and win a game, and another team goes out and loses a game, and we can argue till the cows come home about strength of schedule. This is the only sport where strength of schedule is ever discussed because of the volume of games and the wide variety of talent levels. But we all know now that the talent is more equally distributed than it ever has been. The schedules are more equal than they have been, especially with the growth of these conference schedules. If you don't lose any games, to me, that's number one. I guess I'm really basic when it comes to that. But it's not just that, it's the way they've won other games, and I just think that I think Dan Lanning is a really, really good coach, and he proves it not just every week, but every year. And I think it won't be long before we're talking about him in the same breath as, he's going to have to get some years under his belt to be all-time greats. But like, he's right there with Kirby, who many think to be the best coach in the game currently.
Yeah. What about Indiana? Because I'm with you. I respect the record. I also look at the schedule, and I know we just talked about scheduling, right? But like, I still think that story is fantastic to watch, and I'm rooting for them. I just don't know. I think they're going to get invited, even if they get destroyed by Ohio State. I still think that they get invited to the playoffs if they win out.
So who do we think? Who is Indiana's best win right now?
There isn't one. Is there? Nebraska?
Nebraska, Michigan?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the hard part, and I had this discussion when we were in with the Ward Manuel and the College Football Playoff Committee last month, going through our mock process, is, Nebraska in mid-October looked like a solid team. And then a couple of losses, and then it's, they're kind of back to reality. It's really hard to judge, okay, but what were they when we beat them? Or what were they when we lost to them versus what are they now? Because the variety and effort that you get week in and week out, and with guys, taking red shirts and going in the portal, that changes a lot. That changes nonstop. I'm just looking at Indiana's schedule now. They hammered Nebraska. They hammered Michigan State. They had a good win, it's like a big win against Maryland. And they hammered UCLA. It's weird, and I'm not a Big Ten apologist, but it's weird that we look at a Big Ten schedule and go, well, who have they played? Especially when the name brands are there. Michigan, Michigan State, Washington, Nebraska, UCLA. Like, those are really good brands that we would normally say that's a great schedule. And I think the committee has proven that they're looking less and less at your best win or your best loss, and they're just looking at the strength of schedule number that's in front. And that overrides everything else. That's what they did with Florida State last year.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't disagree at all. Those brands, UCLA's got 4 wins. Nebraska's got 5. Right. So that's, I guess, my why. Like, yes, if you look at it, like, beating Michigan should matter. Like, it should. This has been a weird year for college football. Let me close out.
It also illustrates, David, quickly, like the Big Ten is so top heavy with those top 4 teams.
Yeah.
Whereas put that head to head with the SEC, like the depth of the SEC and great teams in the SEC is going to be beneficial when you start talking about strength of schedule, because it's more of a battle. You don't have layups in this league anymore.
Let me close out with this, because you brought something up about the way the College Football Committee looks at things. How do you look at things? Like, if A&M beats a top 10 Missouri team early in the season, and Missouri then is, I still think they'll finish 10-2 or 9-3, right? How should you look at it when they beat them, or should you look at it at the totality of the work?
Well, I always lean towards giving the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, if you say, we beat Team X on September 14th, and they weren't that good then, but they end up being excellent, then I'll say, well, no, they had the bones to be great. Like, we don't know. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, right? Somebody changes a quarterback, key player gets hurt, a couple guys transfer. If the roster changes, that's different. It's just so hard because we think we know who a team is in September, but it's based on who they were last year and what we are projecting them to be. I give the benefit of the doubt. I say, you know what? That team was undefeated when you beat them. They were a top 10, top 15 team. That's who they were then. And that snapshot, as wide a variance as there is with that, and there should be built into that, to me, that snapshot is still more indicative of the quality of that win on that date versus trying to reverse engineer this thing, on December 8th.
Tom, great stuff, brother. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, David. Thanks, bro.
See you, man. Tom Hart there on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Appreciate his time. We'll hit a break here. We'll come back. I think Billy should be in studio. We're talking Milliken Reserve now, farm-to-table community in College Station. They got homes, they got trails, they got farms, they got wide open spaces, and they have a mission to build a healthy community around nature. Here's a couple of events they have coming up. On the 14th, Sunrise Coffee. On the 15th, volunteer at the farm. You can do that also on the 16th. They got the farm stand coming up the 16th. Trail running with the Lone Star Trail Runners on the 16th as well. And then back to the Sunrise Coffee on November 21st. They're committed to maintaining and restoring that natural habitat. They have every form of animal you can imagine. They got the hiking, the biking, the canoeing, the kayaking, the equestrian trails. You name it, they have it there at Milliken Reserve. You can learn more at millikenreserve.com. That is millikenreserve.com. We are back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. As a reminder, the final segment of the show today is brought to you by Double Dave's. That is at around 10:50. But right now, caller number 12, 979-693-1150. We're going to hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's. They've been serving Aggieland since 1984. They have your favorite pizza. They have your favorite world-famous pepperoni rolls. Reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click on doubledaves.com. And your favorites are on their way. As a reminder, they are not open on Mondays. All right, let's do this. I want to kind of get into a topic, and I'll see. Oh, yeah, we can't call them because of Double Dave's. Good call. I want to get into a topic, and I think you all can help me out with this as we wait for Billy to get to the studio. Because I'm talking to Tom there, and Nick, join us on this one. And I'm finding how I'm arguing with myself. For instance, I want to grade A&M for beating Missouri as a top 10 team, and I want to freeze that moment in time because that's when A&M beat Missouri. Do we all agree with this?
Well, that's how it appears on the record. I mean, the record doesn't change, you know?
Yeah.
A&M beat number 8 LSU. Billy's here, by the way, so no need to call him. But they beat number 8 LSU. They beat number 9 Missouri, right? They didn't beat number whatever they are now. So, yes, I agree with you.
All right. How do you feel about that, Jackson?
Yeah, because I think at that time it was a big game. So, I mean, they were ranked when they were ranked that. So,
but here's the part that I think we have to bring up. I also, going into the Texas-Michigan game, said on this show, Billy said it, OB said it, Michigan is not a top 10 team. Michigan is a team that might win 7 or 8 games. We said it then. So when we talk about Texas's schedule, right, I almost feel like it depends on what benefits us more is the way I look at it. So, like when we look at the Texas win over Michigan, we all knew Michigan was a joke. And I don't want to use that as my barometer. But when A&M beats Missouri, I do want to use it. Billy, I'm basically talking about how when you assess a team's wins and look at their season and when you're trying to determine the college football playoffs, A&M beats a top 10 LSU team and a top 10 Missouri team. I want to freeze that ranking in time when we assess their wins this year. But I don't necessarily do that for everybody else because I look at Texas' victory over Michigan, and maybe because I knew Michigan was going to be bad this year, I'm like, but we all knew Michigan wasn't good. And I guess that's part of the politicking that takes place when teams are trying to get their due.
I don't know. Like, here's my thing.
I like the jacket.
Thank you.
Quality.
Is it maroon or it's kind of
like a maroon brown?
Maroon enough. I just need some cooler temperatures for, let's say maybe the Texas game.
It's 80.
It's 80 in here. So can we please get the temperature turned down?
Yeah, we can.
I know Josh is penny pinching up there, but we are not doing it when I'm on air. Or really, y'all shouldn't do it and never do it on Monday or Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I do think we should keep it kind of toasty in here. But I wore this jacket because I'm walking from my car to an air-conditioned studio. So what do I care if I'm wearing a jacket and it's 80 out today?
Typically, I go out there and I make it cooler. I just didn't do it today.
I will say I made a mistake. I wore this last night to the Texans game.
Yep.
And the roof was off, and it was a sauna in there. And I wore a jacket to Baton Rouge Saturday night because of the rain, and it was worse than a sauna. It was a swamp. Nick, can you grab my coffee, too? I left it out there. Sorry. It was a sauna.
Mm-hmm.
So needless to say, I've done a lot of sweating this weekend because of unnecessary jackets. But we'll talk about those games later on. But going back to what you said, I think you should factor in a little bit of both. You know, but it is really where they are at a snapshot in time, not where they were at a. I mean, I like the current snapshot. I think it is the most relevant. I think it's the most fair.
Current snapshot is in right now, looking at the victories, what those teams are now.
What have you really done?
Yeah,
and that applies to A&M. That applies to Texas. That applies to everybody in that top 25. Like if you look at Alabama now and you go, what have you really done? They've really done some stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. They've beaten Georgia. They beat the crap out of LSU in Death Valley.
Yep.
They lost to Vandy. Bad loss, not nearly as bad as it felt at the time. You know, so their loss has gotten better, I feel like. they beat South Carolina, better win now. So as you keep going, it's like A&M. I think South Carolina might win out, and that loss won't look nearly as bad if South Carolina climbs to be like a top 15 team. Where are you right now? You know, that Notre Dame loss looked really bad. We didn't think it was really going to matter. It looked pretty bad in week 2 when they lose to Northern Illinois. Well, they're going to probably end up a playoff team.
Yep.
Probably be, but when the dust settles, because they're going to keep winning, 6th or 7th in the country, maybe top 5 when it's, if there's some carnage. So where is it right now? And for me, where A&M's is right now is they've got a couple of teams hanging into the top 25 that they've beaten, and they've lost to 2 teams, one in the top 10, one in the top 25. I think if you're asking me to project, when it's all said and done, Notre Dame will be, comfortably inside the top 10 as a playoff team, threatening top 5. I think South Carolina could very well win out and be top 15. And I think LSU will win out and stay in the rankings. Now they got to beat Vandy at home, which I don't think is a guarantee with the way they play against running dual threat QBs. But I think they'll be ranked. I don't think Missouri will. So who does Missouri play?
Missouri's got an easy end of the schedule.
Yeah, but I thought Missouri, whoever they play this weekend, is it South Carolina? Look it up.
Yeah, you're right. Disregard.
I think they're going to lose this weekend.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think they'll be out. So,
but Missouri, even if they won out, I think they're out. You can't get embarrassed in your 2 losses.
Out of the playoff, yeah, I think there'll be too many 2-loss teams. I'm just saying for A&M, what it will look like at the end of the year when you say.
I also think you got to look at if a quarterback injury changes the trajectory of a team. I think you go back to when you beat them, the QB. So
to a degree.
Okay.
I mean, if you're starting to split hairs with another team.
Missouri's better with Brady Cook than with Drew Pine.
For sure. I mean, look, with Brady Cook, maybe this team does, their schedule's pretty weak. Maybe they do get to 10-2. I think they'd be 9-3. I think they'd lose to South Carolina and then win. But because we saw them with Brady Cook, and they didn't look that great either. They overtime against Vandy. They barely beat BC. They got blown out by A&M, and then all this stuff started. Here's one thing that I've run into since yesterday, because I quote tweeted the thing with Texas.
Yeah.
So everyone's the Longhorns are yeah, they're going to have a win over A&M. Let's leave that out. That's not even. We're not even going to talk about that to start. We'll get to that. My issue with Texas is if you look at what they've played so far, and you can talk about, all we heard was the SEC gauntlet, yada, yada. You didn't play it, period. You can take some kind of pleasure in the fact that the year you came in, and really the last couple years, it has kind of watered down, to the point where Bama wasn't the greatest Bama ever. LSU hasn't been, Florida's in the dumps. There's been some of that. But the main thing is the scheduling. You just haven't played, and I've said it a million times. We are going into the second week in November. They've played one conference road game. And I know Vandy doesn't suck, but Vandy is there's not even a close second. It's the easiest place to play, not only in the SEC, one of the easiest in all of college football in terms of environment.
Yep.
You go there, and I say it, I've been there, I know, nobody's there. Your fans can outnumber the Vandy fans. It is not a daunting road environment. It's the only road game Texas has played as we go in. They're going to Fayetteville this weekend. That's it. That is not what people talk about in the last dozen years that you've had to hear about when it comes to the, quote, SEC gauntlet. You are not running a gauntlet. You are running this is the children's version of American Gladiator that you're running. Now, with what and by the way, I don't know what Taylor Green's status is, but you might be playing a backup quarterback for if you count backups and guys that have been benched since you've played them, that number's up to 5 in 9 games. And they still haven't played an offense with a pulse. Georgia continues to prove that. They are 0-1 against teams that are even I guess Vandy, you could say, sniffs the rankings, but teams that are even sniffing a ranking, they've played one.
Right.
They're not 3-6, or 6-3. 3 of the 9 have been ranked. One. And they lost at home where they were down 23-0, and they lost by 2 touchdowns at home to a Georgia team that got their asses whipped by Ole Miss. They almost got run out of the stadium by Bama. And then and those are their other 2 road tests. So they get almost run out by Bama, and then they come back and lose. They go to a 2-loss Bama team. They go and get stomped into the, is it grass in Oxford or is it turf? Smash into the grass in Oxford by 2 on the road, 28-10. But yet they go on the road to Austin and they beat the brakes off of Texas. And that's the one time in 9 games we've seen you play anyone of note. That's it. And they should have lost to Kentucky, and they could have lost to Florida before Florida went and had to put in a quarterback from Yale.
Right.
That Texas played for 4 quarters. Here's the deal. What I look at tells me Texas is really good. What they have proven is nothing. Now, for the Longhorns that are getting, and this has a lot to do with A&M. It has a lot to do with A&M, and that's why I'm spending a minute talking about it right now. Don't worry about some fraudulent run to the SEC title game if you're Texas. Who cares? You have nothing to apologize for. It's the other fan bases, and it's the team that would get left out of the playoff that would have the gripe. Unlike most, Texas A&M has a direct say in it. Okay? So Texas comes to Kyle Field. If Texas is the 3rd best team in the country, they will prove it. They have to come on the road and play, hopefully, a ranked and 9-2 A&M team at Kyle Field. That's a tough test at Auburn. We're going to talk plenty about it. Hopefully a 9-2 A&M team at Kyle Field. Very tough road environment, as proven by LSU and Missouri. And then they would have to win the SEC title game. And then they would have to, win games in the playoffs. So at the end of this,
it won't matter.
If they advance far, then they were deserving of it. But as of today, right now, I think they look like a top 5 team to me. They do. You look around the top 5, they do. My issue and why I bring this up and why I think it does need to be talked about, and this is what the Longhorn fans won't like, is if they didn't beat A&M, then it really affects A&M and other teams in the conference. Because if they did, they are the elephant in the room right now. The elephant in the room that no one's talking about is if A&M beats Texas. And again, that is a good Texas team. So everything you just heard that you want to get all upset about, tell me where I'm wrong. But if A&M beats Texas, a 10-2 Texas team, they're positioned so high in the rankings right now, and this is to me where let's see what the committee does with Georgia and Miami this week. Because Texas has risen up so high that it's tough to envision them falling out with just a loss to A&M. But if they lose to A&M and they're 0-2 against ranked teams, and Georgia's, especially if Georgia were to lose to Tennessee, but Georgia's a 2, if not a 3-loss team, when you're measuring Texas against, say, if A&M went to the SEC title game and lost, a 3-loss A&M team that beat Texas and that has ranked wins and that navigated this whole thing and played for an SEC title, and they played for it because they beat Texas. When you're measuring a 10-2 Texas against a 10-2 Ole Miss, if you're measuring a 10-2 Texas against a 10-2 Georgia or a 10-2 Tennessee, whose resume would be a little lighter, that one would be like, are we going to do that, or is Texas going to be ranked so high that they only drop to like 8 and they're in ahead of more deserving, like Alabama? You look at what Alabama's done on the field. Again, Texas can shut all of this up by just coming to this stadium in a couple weeks and winning. We get that. And if they do, and if they win the SEC title, I don't care about their easy schedule because they're proving it. But it does affect A&M, and it does affect the entire SEC. If the Aggies beat them, what is the committee going to do with that? So watch Georgia and Miami tonight. It's pretty interesting. Neither one of them is going to drop out, though.
All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back. We're about 11 minutes late for this one. A moment for Caldwell Country Chevrolet, Highway 21 in Caldwell. Online, CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. They have a great selection of commercial vehicles, service body trucks, flatbed trucks, and several medium-duty trucks for those heavier jobs. They are locally owned and Aggie-operated. They're a great place to take care of your vehicle when you need your service done, when you need to find a new vehicle, when you need a trade-in. They want to take care of you. They have great trade-in value, great pricing, and an awesome selection. Complimentary pickup and delivery for their service customers, and free oil changes for life on your purchase as long as you own that vehicle from Caldwell Country Chevrolet. It's about a 15-minute drive, the edge of Bryan, to the beginnings of Caldwell. A short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the great people at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell. Online at CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. And we're back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy's with us. Billy, let's talk about last night. Got to go to NRG Stadium, a game where the Texans dominated the first half, and then Detroit took advantage in the second half with some mistakes and maybe a missed call.
For sure.
And they found a way to win the game.
For sure. I saw Bronny crying about it on Twitter. I was in a win-win in that one. I'm always rooting for Dan and the Lions. I really wanted to see them get to the Super Bowl. And part of that is going to be, look, the damn Vikings just snuck past Jacksonville. The Eagles got to play the Cowboys, which so did the Lions a few weeks ago, and they both did the same thing to them. They throttled them. I want to see the Lions keep stacking wins because you'd love for them to only have to win 2 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. B, you'd want them to be at Ford, at Ford in Detroit. Is it Ford Field or Ford Stadium? Field. Yeah, it's Ford Field. You'd love to see them get home games to get there. So games like this are really big when you see all the teams with 2 losses in the NFC. Niners are probably about to start getting better. So because of that, I was like pretty fired up for the Lions to win, but also I want the Texans to make a run out of the AFC. And I love Stroud and I love D'Amico Ryans. And to me, for the first time in a while, this Texans team has real identity. They're banged up, the receiver position and the O-line is not good. But they should have won that game last night. And forget about a pass interference. Like, people want to cry about that. It's like your great kicker missed a field goal that he makes a lot. And the biggest thing is, that interception by C.J. Stroud, I'm watching from, someone like stood up at the last second and it blocked my view from, I couldn't see what happened like to Stroud on the play. All I saw was a wide open receiver, was open for so long that I thought Stroud had like run or dumped it off and somebody was running around, because the guy was open for so long. And then even when he threw it, he was so open, it was so underthrown, but he waited so late on that thing that touchdown pass to a wide open wide receiver, it's 30-13 and the game's over. So to me, like, if you want to beat the Lions and you have a chance to finish them, you have to. In the first half, when they kicked, 3 field goals, turn one of those field goals into a touchdown, you win that game. So they have no one to blame but themselves. They definitely pissed that one away. And then the Lions, if you do that with that football team, they're going to go out and take it. And for them to survive and beat a good Texans team on the road in what was a really good environment last night, the Battle Red, to win that game on the road when your quarterback throws 5 picks, that's one of those games you circle when you're going, okay, who's going to be in New Orleans this year? And like what the Chiefs have been doing almost every week, they're barely beating teams. They circle
win.
that. And you know that about the Chiefs, but even if you just took them this year in a vacuum, you're like, okay, this team's got that it factor, so does this one.
I got to hit a break here. We'll come back with a short segment on the other side. Lewis Engineering, a machine shop located in Marshall, Texas. They want to be your premier metal fabrication supplier. They've been around since 1961, and Lewis Engineering has supplied the Defense Department, aerospace, automotive, and oil field industries with quality metal components. Doug Lewis, he's class of 2004, 4th generation to own and operate Lewis Engineering. His grandfather started it during the Vietnam War, and a few of their services include CNC machining, stamping, assembly. Lewis Engineering is also a certified company who takes quality on-time delivery seriously. They specialize in high-volume production as close to tolerance projects. They invite you to outsource machining to a company that many Fortune 500 companies have trusted over the last 63 years. Call Doug Lewis up for a quote, 903-938-6754. That is 903-938-6754, or visit them online at lewisengineeringco.com. All right, TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Got about a minute before we hit the break, so sorry for the short segment. Jackson Oxney at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. A text for us, please.
Yeah, we got a text from TexAgs in Taylor. How about A&M wins out but loses in the SEC championship? How does the rankings that you described earlier, Billy, affect that? Who gets in or do both? I think she's referring to Texas and Texas A&M.
Well, I think he was trying to kind of go there in that conversation. I think he did allude to it.
Yeah.
You would hope that they would look at that.
Yeah, but I think, it's going to be, the Aggies are going to, it just depends as if and when it gets there. And you got 2 SEC games left, one on the road. Again, go look at Auburn. They've played everybody close. The numbers don't match up with their record. I'm not saying they're a juggernaut. I'm saying it's a dangerous game.
Yep.
Like, beating them, you don't get to put like a feather in your cap and go around and brag about it, but it's a dangerous game. So, but if A&M gets there, it'll be interesting to hear the discussion on who should be in.
Hour number 3 coming up next on TexAgs Live. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Hour number 3 of the program. Billy's in studio. We need to talk about our partners there at the Southwood Valley Animal Hospital. That's where you can find Dr. Justin Casares and Dr. Lauren Casares, who took over ownership a couple years back. They're doing some great work there with the place. Aggie-owned and operated Southwood Valley Animal Hospital has been serving the Brazos Valley for over 30 years, and they're going to take great care of you if you are a listener of TexAgs. If you're not, if you're a student, they've got all these great things that they are doing, routine veterinary services, including the wellness visits, sick emergency visits, surgical care. They provide advanced medical care at affordable prices, and they're elevating medicine right here in the Brazos Valley. If you're a new client and you give them the code TexAgs12, they're going to give you a $12 off of your first visit just for being a new client and a listener of TexAgs. And if you're a student, they're going to take care of you as well. They take care of all the students here in the Brazos Valley. The phone number is 979-693-9898. That is 979-693-9898. Or visit them online at southwoodvalleyvet.com. Billy, we were talking about part of your bye week experience. The other part was you got to go to Baton Rouge.
I did.
How was that experience?
It was very rainy, very wet, treacherous. Getting there and back, it was. I love the pregame environment. A lot of buzz and energy in there, and it really it fooled me.
Did it?
Yeah, it fooled me into thinking that LSU was going to win that football game. My one takeaway of Death Valley, there's so much that I like. I love the call in Baton Rouge. I love the I don't know where I come off on neck. It's too many, like, it's just weird to me, some of the people that are sitting there yelling that. So I don't know. I mean, I can't sit here and act like I don't cuss and do it. That part I don't like. But it is like, I like anything. I'm a sucker for anything that gets the whole crowd involved and gets it loud and intimidating.
Yeah.
And so I like the effect of it. It's they have fun there. Saw a few fights. You know, Bama, LSU don't like each other.
Yeah.
It always adds to the intensity of it. My biggest complaint about that place is the stadium's old, but it's just dark everywhere, like around the stadium. Like it's at night. And it adds to the mystique and aura. You got those lights glowing, but the area is not well lit. It's just dark, and you're walking around outside, and you know it's just not like
feels unsafe.
No. I don't say it was plenty safe. I mean, everybody's nice. I don't mean it like that. It's just like it's dark. Like what you're seeing, it's like your Batman movies. So maybe that adds to it. Like
I'm interested. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like it's like you go into a movie and watch Batman, and the whole thing is dark, the whole movie, and you're like,
I can't really see it.
Yeah. So, and then even it's not as, I don't feel like it's as well lit as some stadiums, and then the sound system to me isn't as clean and crisp as it is here at Kyle. Now, those are my complaints because I think it's top tier.
Yep.
And so my debate is, where do I have it versus Tennessee, versus Kyle Field, versus Tuscaloosa? Those are some of my favorites. You know, throw A&M out of it. I think Kyle Field. The difference is, you know, I'm telling you guys, this is the difference. LSU's 10 out of 10. Kyle Field's 10 out of 10. Knoxville's 10 out of 10. Neyland Stadium. Somebody, I said on Feinbaum Knoxville, and they said that was the only one I didn't give credit to. Neyland Stadium's my favorite, actually. Neyland, Tuscaloosa, Williams-Brice. That's a great point to make.
Yeah.
Because you saw that. That is, when they're up, that's as tough. Not even when they're up, but for a given game, that's as tough as there is. It's 10 out of 10. But game in, game out, year in, year out, who are the best? It's like Tuscaloosa, Death Valley. Remember when we used to say it was the swamp? Well, that's because they were winning.
They were winning, yeah.
LSU's won 3 national titles in 25 years, whatever it is. I know they've had some, not down, maybe they've had 1 or 2 down years, but they've had a lot of 3, 4 loss, you know, where it just hasn't been, they haven't done much. But when you mix in 3 national titles, and you mix in how many times they go into the second half of the year as a title contender in the SEC, that atmosphere is what it is because LSU football has been great. But the difference in what sets apart like an LSU and an A&M both, I've been to Baton Rouge when they suck. I went as a student when they had Jerry DiNardo and they were no good. And if you go play LSU at night, like A&M did when Leland McElroy ran for 2 late touchdowns, that place is intense. So I think the atmosphere is, again, 10 out of 10. I was just commenting on just visibly how, like, dark the whole surroundings are. And then even in the stadium, it feels like that. And part of that was because it was cloudy and it was raining. And honestly, I feel like the last, 3 times I've been there, it's been like that.
Yeah.
But with that said, before the game, I thought it was so electric. And I was like, man, this is SEC Saturday night football, just like we saw at Kyle Field a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, just like we saw in Columbia the week after. So I'm going to come into this environment and win, because it's daunting and it's tough. Alabama and Jalen Milroe are going to have to be a great team. Just like LSU wasn't a great team, so they couldn't get by A&M. Just like Georgia is not a great team, they couldn't get by Ole Miss. Just like A&M couldn't get by South Carolina. Like, you're going to have to come in and play, at least on that night, like a great team on the road in some of these SEC venues. And I didn't think Alabama was that. I also thought if there was one thing LSU would do, one thing they would do, it would be to not let Milroe run on them. After all we heard, because I had heard all my LSU friends tell me or insinuate or, like a backhanded compliment, but it was basically like, yeah, Marcel Reed's really good, but we weren't prepared for him. And they didn't practice him. And damn Brian Kelly, because they weren't prepared to tackle him. And they had no chance to stop a quarterback keeper. Because if you don't practice it all week, then you have no chance. That's what I was told. And then they had a bye week to prepare for a guy that I don't think you need to go study up to know what Jalen Milroe is going to do. And he ran for almost 200 yards. He ran on them from the beginning to the end and circles in between. They beat the crap out of LSU, and a big part of it was because they couldn't tackle Jalen Milroe, and they couldn't handle that. And the other part of it was Nussmeier's turning the ball over still. LSU's, they're not, they're like a lot of the SEC in that, they're not great, but I think they're a tick down. And I think they were very fortunate that Sellers got hurt, or we'd be talking about a 10-2 South Carolina team that all of a sudden would have a lot to play for, and LSU would be sitting on 4 losses right now. That's what I think LSU really is, and I think their people are starting to recognize that. They're noticing that about Brian Kelly.
Well, now they want to fire him.
And again, they can't fire him yet. Right. They got so mad at me last year for saying I thought he was going to pursue the Michigan job, and I had heard he was, and I still think he did. And who knows? I don't know how much longer does Sharon Moore have there. Or do they look at Matt Campbell? Does Brian Kelly see that as a better fit? That would be doing LSU a big favor. Last year, everybody got very defensive. I think this year, LSU fans would go. I think he's better than they give him credit for.
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound familiar because we went through it. Yeah.
I think he's better than people give him credit for, but I think they're getting fed up in Baton Rouge. They're getting fed up a little bit, and I understand. And we, like you said, we've been there, where Jimbo almost got over the hump, and then as soon as he didn't, you kind of knew, man, it's going to be hard to get back.
He almost gets over the hump. Then there's rumors about him going to LSU, and you're like, no, and you give him the extension, even though that was in the works already. And then you're like, God, I wish you would have gone to LSU. You're like, that's kind of like LSU's going through now.
Yeah, so So Bama, it's hard to see Bama losing a game. They play almost nobody. So unless Auburn's the interesting player now, because they get A&M at home and then they get Bama. Can they disrupt this thing with all their talent and all their close calls this year? And, we obviously hope that one thing doesn't happen, but they're an interesting spoiler all of a sudden. But Bama is probably not losing. So they're probably a 10-2 Alabama team with wins over Georgia, win at LSU, Who else have they beat? South Carolina. Again, that's another team that can really benefit from South Carolina continuing to win.
So
So Bama, I think at 10-2 is in. They don't have if they don't have to play in the SEC title game and they're a straight 10-2 and they've won like 5 or 6 in a row down the stretch, or probably 6 in a row down the stretch, I think they'd be in.
What is that tiebreaker situation? If Bama's 10-2, Ole Miss is 10-2, A&M is 10-2, and Texas is 10-2.
Well, A&M and Texas. Well, I guess they could be. Texas would have to lose to like Arkansas, and then A&M.
Well, A&M would be a one-loss SEC team in that scenario. So,
not really. No.
One-loss SEC team though.
You mean
for the SEC championship game? Sorry,
but I don't think that's an issue because I think A&M at 10-2 is in the SEC title game.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Tennessee's still in the mix there.
Someone tell me if there's a world that A&M wouldn't. No, there's not a world. Texas A&M, if they went out, is in the SEC title game.
Yeah, because they'd have one loss.
And Texas would have 2, and that would mean the only other team capable of having one is Tennessee. So A&M, look, we're in year 1 under Mike Elko, and they're going to go into their final 2 SEC games ranked in the top 15, and one win from setting up. With one more win, you guarantee yourself the best SEC record tied with, you've done it one other time. The first year you were in, tied for the best SEC record you've had in 13 years. You will play a final game for a berth in the SEC title game for the first time in 13 years. You will play that last game mattering in terms of you can get to Atlanta. You will be playing Texas in your final game of the regular season for a shot at 10 wins and a playoff berth. So this Auburn game is so massive for so many reasons. It's almost like makes you just go like, gosh, it's big. It gives you this sense of unease a little bit, but at the same time, you know the team Texas A&M's had all year, and they've been the better team. So that's what stands in the way of you lining all this up against Texas and all the talk and all that. Like I said about the Longhorns, if they're that good, they'll beat A&M, they'll win an SEC title, and they'll go win playoff games. If they lose to A&M, I think like you could have if the Aggies win their next 2. Here's what I think is likely: Texas at 10-2, Alabama at 10-2, Ole Miss at 10-2, and then Georgia at 10-2. With Nico being banged up and that game being in Athens, I'm going to give that one to Georgia.
Yep.
I don't think LSU would not be 10-2. They'd be 9-3, but they could have 2 losses in the SEC, and who knows what that tiebreaker would do. But those 4 teams, am I leaving anybody out?
A&M?
No. I'm saying if A&M beat Texas, I think the way it will shake out. I'm sorry, 5 because Tennessee would be 10-2.
So if
Georgia beat Tennessee,
so do that again. Tennessee 10-2.
We don't have to say 10-2. They're all.
Bama.
My friend's going to make fun of me.
Tennessee.
You didn't have to do that.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I missing?
Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas.
And then A&M in that scenario is 10-2.
No, they're not. Oh, 10-2, yeah, but it does, I'm saying.
So what I'm saying is, do 6 SEC teams get in the playoffs? And that's a no.
No. First of all, A&M won't be 10-2. They would either be 11-2 or 10-3. Obviously, they clinch with 11-2, but 10-3. That's where it shows how dicey even that could get, because you might have 5 SEC teams. Well, one of them in this world would beat A&M and be in, is what we're saying, for A&M to be 10-3. So one would be in at 11-2. You'd have 4 SEC teams at 10-2 and A&M at 10-3, having advanced to Atlanta. And probably of those 5, maybe 3 get in. Definitely 2, maybe 3.
Yep.
Because the one, I'm saying, the SEC champ would already be in. So a couple of teams out of those 5 would be left out, and maybe 3 of the 5. That's where it gets crazy, and that's where the committee is going to have some really tough decisions, not only within the conference, but also with some of these teams that are like on the edge of the field that don't play anybody and play in leagues that are clearly
Indiana.
inferior. A one-loss Indiana is going to be in. It doesn't matter.
Even if they lose by 30.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
I think so. And again, what is Indiana? What have they done? I think it's a great story, but like
They beat Michigan, they beat Michigan State and Nebraska, all teams that have 5 or less wins. Well, how many wins does Michigan have? Michigan has 6.
Michigan's 5-5.
5-5. Okay, there you go.
So I said they'd lose 4 or 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong.
They're worse than that.
Yep. I said Oklahoma was gonna lose at least 5 games. I was way wrong. Brent Venables ain't the guy. I was right about that from day one.
But they won't fire him this year.
No. There's a lot of coaches next year that'll be, I think, Brent Venables, Billy Napier, probably Sam Pittman again. He lives on that hot seat. I think Mark Stoops.
You don't think he gets fired this year?
I don't know. I feel like they have to pay him a lot too. Mark Stoops. Am I leaving an obvious one out in the
BK?
SEC? I don't think BK would get fired.
If they're 8-4 next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big if, though. I mean, I think they'll go 9, and I still think they'll go 9-3 this year. Now, if they went 8-4, 8-4 again, but he would be much lower.
And speaking of Florida, they had the hardest schedule in football this year, or one of the hardest schedules in football. They're going to have that same schedule again next year.
Yeah,
it'll be flipped.
They don't have much of a chance.
But who would have thought that he would have a better chance of keeping his job than Todd Golden, the basketball coach who's right now going through it?
Well, who would have thought a lot of things? Who would have thought that Todd Golden was Todd Golden?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But sometimes allegedly feels differently than other times.
Surprisingly, he hasn't been suspended because I'm trying to think back. Other coaches in that same scenario have at least been suspended during.
Strickland's got his hands full right now, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
he does.
He got his hands full down there in Gainesville.
All right, we'll hit a break.
Unenviable position there.
We'll come back with more. Got by the way, something you were talking about there kind of alludes to a quote that I heard from Danny Cannell. Right now we're talking Rollo Insurance. The difference is real. You got to call them up, 888-44-ROLLO, or go to rolloinsurance.com. They are absolutely the best when it comes to your insurance. We use them for all of our insurance, our car owner, our car insurance, our homeowner's insurance, you name it. They take great care of us, and they're really great at what they do. My family knows, and many others here in the Brazos Valley certainly know. The Aggie community has certainly come to them in droves because they are the best when it comes to getting you the right insurance situation. Go to rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs and initiate your relief today with our Rollo Insurance. They've got over 60 offices in Texas. They've got them all over the place, Houston, Dallas, Austin, you name it. And obviously they're beyond Texas now. And when I was driving to Brady the other day, I saw Rollo Insurance on my way there. So you can find them in the small towns and the big towns, you name it. It is rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs, 888-44-ROLLO, or rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs. We are back here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, hour number 3 of the program. Billy, by any chance, did you catch what Danny Cannell said over the weekend?
Yes.
So they were talking about Texas, and in that quote, he said, I think Texas A&M is the better team in Texas. And I think it just goes to say that sometimes these analysts that we label a certain way kind of depends on the situation. He wasn't a big Jimbo guy, and I get it, because Jimbo left his squad. But he's been very complimentary of A&M this whole season, even before the season, with the Coach Elko hire. He seems to be a Coach Elko guy, and he likes what we're building here.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I don't think A&M has shown enough for me to say that A&M is the best team in Texas yet, ahead of I'm sorry, SMU. I'm leaving you guys out for now. But I don't think it has shown enough to tell me that they're the best team in Texas, the Aggies, especially in light of what happened with LSU this weekend and what we really see of Missouri. With that said, I don't think Texas has shown enough to stand there and definitively say they're better than A&M. I think they are a more balanced team right now because of playmakers in the run and pass game, and A&M is still trying to figure that out in the pass game, and because of stability at quarterback and experience. I know Ewers, and I'll be the first one to say I think he's up and down, but they've got real experience and stability there. I think both defenses are really good. I think Texas looks elite. I still don't think they are. I think they're really good. I think they've played
no offense.
Terrible offenses all year. And by terrible, I mean absolute garbage. So a lot of defenses would look that good. But I do think they're really good, like Collins, Hill at linebacker. And I know I'm skipping guys, but Jade Barron, that secondary, they're a very good defense. One of the better defenses in college football. But those numbers, I don't think tell the true story.
Right.
I think they can't. Some certain teams can get them. I don't think it's Arkansas. TBD, if it can be A&M, it's certainly not Kentucky. To me, like A&M, TBD here at Kyle Field. I think a team that Texas would not want to run into would be Ole Miss. I think again, Georgia's not a good offensive team. I don't think Tennessee's very good offensive.
So who is the best team in the SEC as of today?
I think right now it's Ole Miss.
And then Alabama second?
I'd probably go Texas second based on what I see. Okay. I think Texas. I think Jalen Milroe, Bama's a real problem for you if he's running around and you don't have an answer to that. I think if you can beat their blocking and defend him, then we've seen Bama struggle a lot this year.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to just jump on this one and tell you how great Jalen Milroe is yet. I mean, it was just a couple weeks ago I saw him lose to Tennessee, where their offense couldn't do much of anything. And a couple weeks before that, they lost to Vandy. Then they struggled to beat South Carolina. I think they're trending up. I think they're starting to really figure it out on defense. But I would put Texas 2. Probably Bama 3, even though they beat Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee beat them. Just watching what I'm watching, I think Bama 3.
I feel like Tennessee's a team we forget often.
Yeah,
like, not me and you, just in general.
I think the wild card is A&M because I know nobody else would, but do you put them 4 ahead of Tennessee and Georgia? Do you put them 5 ahead of one of those, or do you put them 6? It's hard to put A&M ahead of Georgia, right? Because that's not what
Georgia's proven.
It's not what college football tells you to do. But if you look, it's like, man, Georgia to me has looked like the unbeatable Georgia Bulldogs once this year.
But their 2 losses are to 2 of the best teams in college football.
Yeah, but they've looked like the unbeatable best team in college football once this year. They got their asses whipped by Ole Miss. And they almost got run out of the stadium and humiliated by Alabama. And keep in mind, Nuño, those 2 teams, outside of beating Georgia, have 4 losses.
Yep.
Ole Miss lost it. I don't give a damn. Like, tell me why. I don't care. They lost to Kentucky. Ole Miss lost to an LSU team that A&M beat by 2 touchdowns. Okay, I watched the game. I know Ole Miss should have won. They lost 2 games. Alabama got beat by Vandy and Tennessee. That's 4 losses between those 2 teams that really, for all intents and purposes, dusted Georgia. 28-0, 30-7. I know Georgia came back and even took the lead, but those teams outplayed and beat Georgia, which again takes me back to wondering a little bit about what Texas's true level is. And it might be that high, and they might have just had an off day or a bad matchup against Georgia, or it was the early turnovers. But we don't know the answer to that. To me, Georgia, if you're starting to look at them, like, I know, man, I watched that Texas game. They physically kicked their butts. They did. That was a welcome to the SEC moment. Texas fans don't want to hear that. That's what that was. It's okay. It doesn't mean that Georgia will never lose again, and you can ridicule Georgia for losing a game and say, welcome to the SEC. That game was a welcome to the SEC moment for Texas. You can recover from it. A&M had a welcome to the SEC moment in year 1. They lost to Florida, but I don't think that was a close game.
The LSU game?
The LSU game. They came in there and physically took the game over in the 4th quarter, and you couldn't, all of a sudden you couldn't tackle their running backs, and they just powered their way to a victory. Like, to me, that was welcome to the SEC moment for a great A&M team that went and kind of welcomed OU to showed them what the SEC was about later that year. A&M went on to beat Bama. It doesn't mean they weren't ready for the SEC. It was just like, hey, it ain't that easy, in case you forgot. And then everybody was going, well, Georgia's back. They're great. No, they're not, because they can't score points. They don't have an offense, and they don't have a quarterback.
From all the teams we're talking about, who, in your opinion, has the worst looking loss?
Of everybody?
It may be A&M South Carolina.
Are you kidding me?
From the 10.
You're wrong.
Tell me which one.
Tennessee against Arkansas.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a second one, but so maybe that second. A&M losing at South Carolina by the margin, it might be, but
not the loss itself. Yeah.
Why is it not Bama losing at Vandy? South Carolina just beat Vandy 28-7. South Carolina is more likely to be 9-3. Vandy's likely to be 7-5 or 6-6.
Nick brings up a great one. Ole Miss to Kentucky, another one.
There you go.
I think the reason the A&M, I brought it up because of the margin of score. Even though we all know the game was a lot closer than that, how it ended.
Yeah, no, and they might hold that against them. But if you're just asking me, like, realistically,
the Arkansas, that one.
Arkansas, Kentucky at home is probably probably number 1. Arkansas on the road for Tennessee is probably number 2. Vandy on the road for Bama, probably number 3. A&M on the road blown out by South Carolina is probably number 4. Because it by itself, on the road at South Carolina, you watch. There's not going to be a shameful loss at all. But margin, I'll put it there probably at 4. I haven't, Bama's losses, we mentioned the Vandy one. Ole Miss, we mentioned those. Why is Ole Miss's loss at LSU not going to be a worse loss at the end of the season than A&M losing at South Carolina? Because it might be.
Or LSU's
now,
loss
margin, again, Ole Miss went to overtime. But if you're just asking me straight up, like, you lost to this team here and this team here, like, which one? We'll see.
Yeah.
There's a real chance that South Carolina will be. They already are, but are they yet? But there's a real chance they'll be ranked ahead of LSU by season's end.
I don't see.
They got to beat Clemson. That's not easy, but
but
I think they will.
I think they will too. And if that's the case, they'll probably end up 9-3.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's hit a break here. We'll come back. I wanted some other A&M football notes to get into. Also, Aggie basketball versus Lamar tonight. Let's talk Heritage Films. The website is yourheritagefilm.com, yourheritagefilm.com. When I was on my hunt with the Bird Dog guys, I was telling them, I think this would be a cool thing for Chance McClain to be a part of and kind of document. It would have been cool to have my first hunt, all my misses, and then my good get. But all that being said, Chance does these stories. He does family moments. He does documentaries about people's families, about the hierarchy in the family, the grandfather, the grandmother, the dad, whatever the story that you want to tell. He can do it in a first-class 2-hour documentary form, and I highly recommend it. You should check it out because Chance tells these stories. You're going to watch it as a family, and you're going to love it. It's going to be emotional too, especially when we watched my dad's with my family. It was great. You can do it. You can have it done for an Aggie game day, a tailgating experience, a hunting experience, a golfing experience, your family business experience, whatever it may be. The website, yourheritagefilm.com. 713-893-8341, 713-893-8341. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. I'm getting a headache here as we're trying to figure out what kind of spots could be given out to the SEC when it's all said and done. Billy and I are kind of going through scenarios at the break. And there's a world where the SEC only gets 3 teams into the college football playoffs.
Yeah, there's a world. Big Ten's, I just don't see a world where they're not getting 4, which is crazy to me. It's freaking crazy.
Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State.
Yeah. So unless Ohio State were to lose to Indiana and Michigan, it's a hard world to see them not getting 4, which is messed up because, again, and I think the gap is less than it's been in years past, or the tops of the Big Ten. But, is Indiana, and that's a great story, but are they undefeated in playing an SEC schedule unless they got Texas' schedule? Sorry guys. But
and is A&M undefeated with their schedule?
Yes. With Indiana's, probably. Yeah. And A&M, is a 15th ranked team in the country per the AP. So if they get 4, and you've got Boise, it's 5, and you've got Notre Dame at 6, and you've got the SEC champ at 7, and you've got the ACC champ at 8.
ACC could get 2 teams in.
And you've got the Big 12 champ at 9. The SEC would have to claim those other 3 spots to get 4 in. Am I leaving anyone out? Because where you run in the problem is, what if BYU goes 12-0, which is likely, and then loses to Colorado in the Big 12 title game, which is very possible.
Colorado gets in.
Colorado's in. We're talking about conference championship games. Does a 12-1 BYU miss out over a 10-2 SEC team that, in theory, people think is the 4th best team in the league or something? Does a 12-1 BYU get left out for a 10-3 A&M? They should, if you look at wins, but do they? Because then you're really punishing. We talk about A&M, how could you punish them for leaving them? You're really punishing BYU for the same thing, and then some. So really, who should be punished is one of the SEC teams. It could end up being a 10-3 A&M, but it would be one of the SEC teams at 10-2 that probably should be punished. Because say, hey, you lost 2 games. Your resume doesn't look very good, like say at Texas, if they lost to A&M. They never put a 12-1 BYU in ahead of a 10-2 Texas. But just think this through. Why wouldn't you? Fairly, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Texas, how many ranked teams have you played? Okay, there's only 2 in 12 games, and you went 0-2. Aggies are a 2-loss team, or a 3-loss team in this scenario. Georgia's a 2-loss team, maybe a 3, and you're 0-2 against them, and you didn't play another ranked team. Or let's say a 10-2 Tennessee team that lost to Arkansas, lost to, how do you leave out a 12-1 BYU? So it's that's the world, I think, where A&M, the Miami loss helped a lot for the SEC getting that 4th team. Helped a lot because you're likely, the problem will be if SMU and Clemson somehow play for that. I don't know they're tiebreakers. Somebody else listening probably does. If SMU Clemson play for the ACC title and Miami sits it out, then all of a sudden the ACC could be a 2-bid league, which I think would be shameful this year. They should absolutely be a 1-bid conference. I think check those ACC tiebreakers.
But I do remember coming into the year, the talk was the SEC could get 5 teams. But as you see things, the carnage that,
I don't see them getting 5.
No, they're not going to.
Yeah, 4 and quite possibly 3. But I think ultimately it'll shake out where they get 4. It's just hard to see. Hard to imagine a 10-2 Bama getting left out. They won't be where they're ranked. 10-2 Ole Miss not getting left out. SEC champ. So that's where you get 4. Is if it's A&M or Tennessee. All this stuff I've said about Texas, they're going to get in. If it's A&M or Tennessee, then you're definitely going to get your 4 because they're not leaving out Bama, they're not leaving out Ole Miss, and they wouldn't. I don't. Even though it would be a real debate, they're not leaving out a 10-2 Texas,
but a 10-3 A&M
or a 10-2 or a 10-2 Georgia.
But it would be a real travesty to make the SEC championship game, lose that in a close game. Let's just say, not a blowout. Even though I don't know even if that should matter, and that shouldn't count against you. Considering
And it's not just an A&M thing.
No, that's yeah.
What if Ole Miss gets there, loses to Texas, and they're 10-3? They're getting left out.
They shouldn't.
Now, they've got a couple losses though that you could say, hey, but 10-2 Ole Miss, or what if Bama gets in and loses? So it's not just an A&M thing. Greg Sankey's got a real fight on his hands because it's almost like he might end up fighting against himself. Because if you're arguing for a 10-3 SEC championship game loser, it's very likely that would be at the expense of. It's kind of might be at the expense of Miami, but an 11-1 Miami, I think that's a hard argument to make. Versus, or you're arguing against yourself because you're saying this 10-3 team from the SEC should be in. Well, who are they going in ahead of? It's probably an SEC team.
Could you see a scenario, though, and I think we talked about it last week, but that the SEC or conferences in general are like, you know what? We're not going to do this conference championship game because it's costing us money.
SEC will never give up the SEC championship game, in my opinion, because it makes too much money.
But then can they say, hey, we're going to have 2 automatics. If you do
that, then the Big Ten gets 2 automatics also. So now you're up to 4. It's a hard thing to argue. And if you're going to do that, there could come a world where you have like a 4-loss team playing for the SEC title. It's highly like losing. You could have a 3-loss team playing for it, and if they lose, they're a 4-loss team, and you're saying they should be guaranteed to be in the. So it's really tough, and I think Sankey's probably sitting there hoping he doesn't have to
think about it,
make that argument on behalf of that 3-loss SEC team.
All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with some final thoughts. We'll talk a little Aggie basketball. We'll get to your text messages, that and more. Right now, we're talking about career opportunities at the Association of Former Students. If you're looking for a reason to move back to Aggieland, and I've talked to a bunch of Aggies this past week that would love to live in this awesome place, then you need to reach out to the Association of Former Students, who are always looking to hire professionals to join their team. Typically, they have openings in the fundraising department, student programs. Obviously, marketing's had some openings in the past. They're the premier alumni association and the oldest organization supporting A&M in support of that Aggie network. They play a part in every Aggie story from Howdy to here. Don't miss opportunities to help out with Howdy socials, Aggie Ring Day, class reunions, and everything in between. Join a team that exemplifies those Aggie core values of excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, and selfless service, all in support of that worldwide Aggie network. So if you're interested in joining a team or sharing with someone who would be a great fit, please visit tx.ag/association jobs to apply and get more information on each position. It is the Association of Former Students. It is the final segment of the program. It is TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Little Aggie basketball later on tonight as they take on Lamar. And Zurich Phelps certainly was a added and needed presence. Look, they would have taken care of business against, is it East Texas A&M now is what it's called? He would have been, I mean, they were going to take care of business regardless. But it was nice to see what having somebody like a Boots style of scorer does for this offense now that Boots has moved on to to play professionally.
Yeah, and I'd heard that about him. It definitely looks like he stays in attack mode.
Yep.
And you heard that he's a scorer, and you saw that. I think that will the A&M offense and teams, really needs that. I think you saw instantly, opponent aside, what they were missing against UCF. So, look, they've got another tune-up tonight, and you say tune-up in the early basketball season. You never want to call anything a tune-up because you see it every year across the country against everyone. But you have that tune-up, in other words, to get your minutes ready for, I know it's so early in the year, but get your minutes where they need to be, and for Buzz and for this team to just kind of get one more game to gel before they have a real showdown on Friday night with a good Ohio State team that's going to be looking for revenge.
I love watching good basketball. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do, and having good football in November, and hopefully they've turned the corner because I think they
did a great job. Buzz and his staff did a great job in the portal.
Heck yeah, they did.
They did a great job, particularly in the form of 2 starters.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Billy, I want to ask you, because we only got about 3 minutes left, for this team to get back to their identity, obviously losing Le'Veon Moss is a huge loss. That being said, if Chase Basantis comes back, I have full confidence in Amari Daniels being able to continue that trend. He's different than Le'Veon, right? But they can still have that run-first mentality with Amari. And even if Chase wasn't back, I still think they can still be that team.
Yeah, I think so too, but I think Chase is a big, big deal. And I think they will get him back. But I think that's a big, big deal. I think he's that good. And when you look at what Auburn has on the D-line, but particularly you look at Texas and Alfred Collins, who's having a monster year. Broughton's pretty good. Like, you need to be at your best, and Chase Basantis might be their best offensive lineman.
Yeah.
You need to be at your best because you don't have your best running back. So Amari Daniels is going to have to be at his best for 2 games. I know there's more down the road if that happens, but I mean, like, we're talking about to get to the SEC title game. Amari Daniels is going to have to be at his best for 2 games. Your O-line will have to be at its best, and that O-line at its best has 71 on it. So time will tell on when we see Chase back. I think it's probably Auburn or Texas. Hopefully, I mean, I'm not guaranteeing either one of those. I think possibly Auburn, likely Texas, not certain on either one. That's an injury that is tricky, the ankle sprain. So, yeah, getting him back, and Amari Daniels is just going to have to rise up. I had a friend of mine tell me, I think you guys are underselling the importance of losing Moss. I said, in what world have I not said it's a devastating loss? And I thought it was devastating in South Carolina the other day. But in the last 2 games, I saw Amari Daniels go 56 for a touchdown against a really good South Carolina defense. And I saw Amari go 12 for 91 against LSU. So, and I've seen him do other things to tell me he can handle this, carrying the load, but it's still not Le'Veon Moss, but he can still have 100-yard games. He's capable of doing that with enough touches. It's just going to look different. I don't think there's going to quite be that wear you down factor that they had with Moss, but for a couple games with great blocking and Colin Klein scheming and
with Marcel running too,
and a threat to run the ball, I think it could open some things up, and Amari could have. I mean, my God, how many times have we seen A&M where we go, oh, they lost their starter at this position, and another SEC team and the backup comes in and gets you. Unfortunately, we've been victimized by that.
Yeah.
Time and time and time again. So we'll see. Yeah. I remember a guy named Darius Geis when Leonard Fournette got hurt, and I know Geis is, he's better than Daniels as a college football back, but I mean, you didn't know at the time that Darius Geis was going to come in there and run for like 300. And I could give you far different examples that don't involve an NFL draft pick at running back, but that's just one that just jumps out at you that you remember.
Billy, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
All right. Tomorrow on the program, Shireen Williams will be with us. We'll have Jamie McCoy, Jordan Pugh, and we're working on a couple other things. All right, that's going to do it for TexAgs Live here on a Monday. Thanks to Nick Savage, Jackson Oxney, and everybody in the back, and all our friends at Bryan Broadcasting. See you mañana.